Hello everybody and welcome back to the United Stand. We are joined for an interview with transfer expert and journalist Ben Jacobs. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Where in the world are you joining us from today?
Yeah, usually when the window's dirt and I cannot tell you the location, but now we're fine. I'm in Madrid. It's not a holiday. I'm at a sports conference called the World Football Summit. And as you can see by my face, I've not caught any sun yet. Too busy networking.
Networking is good. Hopefully we can get some info out of you today on the show, Ben. Also, I do have to apologise to everyone. Sorry, we are a little bit late, a few technical difficulties, but the show must go on. So sorry about that, guys, but we're ready to get into it. We're going to be talking potential sales, stadium plans, January transfer window. So Ben, I wanted to start off and I want to touch a little bit on the speculation of the club potentially going back onto the market. So we've seen Manchester United's share price climb recently. Do you know a reason behind that? Does it tell us anything to do with the club potentially putting it back on the market, or is it just because of potential commercial deals or anything like that?
I think it can be a mixture of things, but what I would say is that when it was first revealed by Turkey Al-Sheikh that there might be something advanced, the stock market didn't react at all, and that is actually a clear indication it didn't believe Turkey Al-Sheikh. And as we've said on previous shows, on the one hand, Turkey Al-Sheikh is extremely well connected and you have to sit up and take notice. But some things that he said in the past have had to be taken with a pinch of salt. For example, posting a photograph of Mo Salah in an Al Hilal shirt and just days later he extended at Liverpool. So the stock market can be a reaction to potential investment, but at the moment, there's not much to read into what the market is doing. More important, this ever became advanced, the Glazers would have to inform the stock market, and that hasn't happened. So the latest is as follows. Number one, the Glazers have not had an offer from anybody. Could they be holding talks behind other people at the club's back? Absolutely. Are they advanced? No. And then where does the money come from? Well, Turkey Al-Sheikh confirmed something that we broke on this show, that it's not Saudi Arabia. I don't want to disappoint the chat, but Sheikh Jassim is not coming back to the table. There is no possibility, I am told. And in addition to that, the number the Glazers want is in excess of £5 billion. And if you go back through the SEC filing to look at the different bids from Sheikh, none of the offers were anywhere close to that number. And what makes the number higher is if whilst this drag-on clause is valid, Glazers to sell, so Jim Ratcliffe is guaranteed $33 a share, which takes the overall valuation of the club for something around 4.7 billion. So again, not far off that £5 billion number. And all of this means if someone's to buy the club now, they're going to have to pay a premium. And then Sir Jim Ratcliffe would have to go buyer wanted 100%. So there's a few variables here. Specifically regarding the UAE consortium, which we broke on, nothing is direct with the Glazers at the moment. There's no that it turns into any kind of bid. But the club is effectively on the market whilst this drag-on clause exists, because it allows the Glazers to have their cake and eat it. They can speak to investors. If their valuation is met, they can choose to sell. Investor wants 100% of the club, then Sir Jim Ratcliffe gets dragged out or dragged along with the Glazers, which allows the Glazers to seek investment whilst continuing to back Sir Jim Ratcliffe to run the football side of the business. And this is why many investors in the business feel that the Glazers got an incredible deal here, because they were able to sell some of the club, have Ratcliffe run the football side, be the scapegoat if things are not going well, take a lot of the credit if things do go well on and off the field, and still wait and see if anyone is prepared to match their valuation. The last thing and the most interesting thing that I can add, and I think this counts as a bit of a United Stand exclusive, is within the UAE, one company in particular is involved in these talks. It's unclear whether they will front the consortium, but International Holding Company, or IHC, who have been around for about 3 decades, have been part of talks to put together a prospective UAE-based consortium. We don't know whether anything is going to materialise. And as we said on TalkSport a few weeks ago, some ex-Manchester United legends have also been sounded out, not to invest, but just to be ambassadors. And quite interestingly, some, I think they'll be excited. To others, I think they will almost feel the optics of this are not quite right because of the kind of personality he is. One ex-Manchester United legend in particular has held direct talks about maybe coming on board. And before I give the name, Beth, I'm going to ask you to guess. Who do you think it is?
Either. Wait, give me a little clue. Give me a little clue.
I'll give you a big clue. Okay. Seagulls.
Pardon?
Seagulls.
Seagulls.
The chat will know before you.
I'm having a look.
French.
Cantona.
Initials are EC. Eric Cantona is one of the names that's being approached. Of course, sometimes speaks. A lot of what he says can't be taken seriously either. So the optics of having him as the face of it would be very interesting to me. But he is one of several ex-Man United legends, not to invest, but to back a prospective consortium if it materialises. But I would just stress one thing really clearly. It is nowhere near as advanced as Turkey Al-Sheikh implied, nor have the Glazers had any kind of direct contact yet. So there's no guarantee this even develops into anything. But Eric Cantona is one of the names that has been approached.
Well, he spoke out quite publicly against the ownership in it previously, hasn't he? And he's spoken about wanting to see Manchester United back right at the top, and he's been very outspoken. I can't believe I didn't get that quicker than what I did. I didn't want to get it wrong, but no, that is really exciting and very, very interesting. And there's been other players approached as well. I mean, when you talk about it maybe not fitting their sort of brand, I can kind of potentially guess who that could be, but there's been other ex-players that have been looked at as well for that.
Yeah, and I think this is the nature of building a prospective consortium. And I must stress, I've done many takeovers and I've heard many consortiums, and several of them around Newcastle, around Manchester City before their current ownership. You often get a name, and as soon as you get a name, you start to think, is this optics, or has this got some? Every entity from the Middle East can actually prove their funds. So there's no guarantee the Glazers want to sell a new. The club will raise in value. There's no guarantee anybody wants to meet the Glazers' asking price. And if they turn out to be a solo consortium, they may be bidding against themselves. And that was Sheikh Jassim's perspective, if you remember, that Jim Ratcliffe was flexible and chose to pivot away from full ownership. So Jassim felt for 100% of the club, he was the only one in the race. And he was not prepared to go higher because there were no other bidders. And at the moment, we don't know of several groups at the table. We don't know of any remnants from interested parties when the club was on the market. And we can be sure, I can tell you categorically, Sheikh Jassim is not back at the table. So anybody either going to the Glazers or just considering a consortium, and we really are at early stages, despite what Turkey Al-Sheikh said, A, maybe nowhere near the valuation, B, may choose not to bid, C, could be doing it for optics, and D, has not yet gone to the Glazers at all. So I think a lot is being overblown in terms of excitement. And some of that is just down to the fact that the market is aware this clause came into effect in mid-August. The Glazers are still the sole decision maker as to whether they stay or go. And Jim Ratcliffe has no control. If the Glazers want to go and a consortium wants 100%, he gets dragged along. And that's why it's quite complicated, because a lot of people may covertly speak to the Glazers privately. It may lead to nothing, and nobody else at the football club may have a clue what's going on.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I know it's such early days, but it is really interesting that there actually is some truth to that. And I wanted to ask you about it previously, so I'm glad that we kind of got it out there. And I know a lot of people are already putting the king in the comments because people get carried away, but it's good to see that there is some sort of potential. And just off the back of that, also I will just make it aware, you do keep freezing a little bit, but I think we're going to carry on. I think it's still okay. So hopefully the internet can take us through this over in Madrid. It can hold strong because
conference centre internet.
I know. Every time you're saying something, it'll be a really key point, and I'm like, oh, I'm looking over, like trying to make sure I can hear everything. But I wanted to ask you Sir Jim Ratcliffe's stance on this, because I know he won't be super involved in these talks as of now because it's nothing really developed, but he will have seen the news about rumours, about bids, consortiums, everything like that. Do you know what his stance is on the whole situation?
I mean, I would be staggered if behind the scenes the Glazers are not open if they hold these conversations, even though they can maybe have more formative discussions behind the scenes without alerting everybody. I think the line of communication between Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers is really strong. So I would be surprised if anything catches Sir Jim Ratcliffe out. And this is why I think there's a lot made of Turkey Al-Sheikh's tweet. But the reality is that Jim Ratcliffe's put $300 million US of his own money into the club. Jim Ratcliffe is running the sporting side. Jim Ratcliffe is predominantly with his team deciding on the fate of Ruben Amorim. And all of that suggests that Ratcliffe thinks he's going to be around for the end of the season and even all the way through to when this new stadium opens. And you can only have the investment and the day-to-day control of Ineos if you trust that the Glazers don't want to go now. And I think the other key point that people forget is that this clause was not railroaded into the deal just to allow the Glazers to have control. So Jim Ratcliffe agreed to it. And knowing he wanted to be at Manchester United for years and decades, not just a matter of months, he would have asked the Glazers at the time they allowed this clause to come into play. Are you going to be seeking other investment? Are you going to be putting the club on the market? Are you going to be holding meetings? And I think from the Glazers to Ratcliffe is no, we're going to wait and we're going to try and get this football club to raise in valuation, and much further down the line we'll then consider some kind of entire exit. So Ratcliffe is quite calm about the situation, and we need to make one thing extremely clear here, that anything that may be developing out of the UAE has not reached the Glazers. So a suggestion, the Glazers are holding meetings, the Glazers are looking for a way out, the Glazers are going to pull Ratcliffe out with him. They're as in the dark as everybody else, because can and does put itself together and then decide if they want to approach the Glazers. None of that's happened yet. Even with the ex-Manchester United players that I mentioned, they've been sounded out. We don't know if they've agreed. We don't know whether they've held advanced talks. We don't know whether they're sold by a potential consortium led out of the UAE. So it's much earlier stages. But of course, Turkey Al-Sheikh's tweet has sent the fan base into meltdown. And I think Jim Ratcliffe is very calm because he still believes if the Glazers are looking to sell, he'll be the person that's in been yet.
Yeah, I mean, very, very early stages. So be aware of that, everybody. But there is some sort of talks beginning, but early stages. And I wanted to ask about that because Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers are going in together on this new stadium project. And they've revealed the plans for the new stadium. A lot of people are still in the dark about how that's going to be funded and when it will eventually start to take shape. But once that stadium project begins, how does that impact a potential ownership situation? Because it feels like once construction starts, once the ball starts to roll with that, then a further change in ownership will probably be very unlikely for quite a long time while that's being built.
Yeah, the challenge is the drag-on clause can be so complex. We don't know exactly when it expires. We don't know at what point Sir Jim Ratcliffe might have matching rights. And there are even scenarios outside of Manchester United where if the market enterprise of the club raises to a certain value, you can say the drag-on clause goes out of activation and instead the club grows beyond a certain price. And then the Glazers, if they want to sell, would have to put the club on the market in a different way. And maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe could therefore stay. And it's fascinating because Ratcliffe's got sporting control. But at the moment, the Glazers could kick him out of the football club if they wanted to at the right price. And as you say, that creates uncertainty on the sporting side, which is why I think Ratcliffe is in the loop and is speaking to the Glazers and doesn't think they want to go at this point in time. With the stadium, I don't think it the bearing, simply because it's a project involving a variety of stakeholders that's not really contingent on the football side. And in the future of the club, you're modernising it. It helps the brand as well. And that's a long-term project. And so much can change between on paper to construction to opening. And we definitely can't rule out the Glazers once the project's a reality and therefore the price of the club raises further, choosing to go before it's open. And from Ratcliffe's point of view, we know he thinks he can build it by about 2030, but if it's 2032, it's years away and you can never say what's going to happen. So I don't think the uncertainty around potential ownership will have a direct impact on the stadium side, simply because this project is going ahead either way, regardless of when it opens, who the owner of the football club is. I think what breeds more debate and uncertainty and questions is the longer Sir Jim is trying to build the football side, and if at the same time the drag-on clause is valid, there's always an element of Ratcliffe looking over his shoulder and wondering he might want to swoop in for 100% of the club and build on all the things that he's changing. And that is a danger, I suppose, that the better Manchester United do at football and the more stable and modern the club becomes, the more marketable it is to another investor. And as long as the drag-on clause is valid, the Glazers will ultimately be the ones that are in control of that.
Yeah, just on the stadium a little bit there. I mean, you've reported on the redevelopment of Old Trafford before. Is there any latest on timelines or any decisions there? Because it feels like it's been a little bit slow on that front for a while, and I know a lot of people are interested in on where that redevelopment is at.
Yeah, as you've seen, they've sort of tweaked the designs, mostly from fan and stakeholder feedback. And now you start to go from on paper to reality, still with the view in Ratcliffe's eyes to opening it in 2030, but I think most stadiums take a few more years. So we'll wait and see if it happens at super speed. That will be the earliest timeline. Latest timeline might be more 2032, 2033. And I hear mixed messages, those on the architect side and those on the Ineos side really feel, because this is a Trafford region with lots of stakeholders working together, they can do it at super speed, and super speed for a stadium project would years. Others feel that 7 or 8 years is the normal timeline and it's going to hit hurdles, whether it's stakeholders, whether it's residents, whether it's planning permission, and ultimately funding as well. But the sort of big recent development is Manchester United are now optimistic that they can strike a deal for the land around Old Trafford. And once they've got that, they can start to liaise with all the different stakeholders to get construction off the ground. And the sooner they get that land, the sooner the project can really start. So Manchester United have now made an offer for the land, which will facilitate this from a reality or an on-paper project to something that they can start building. And that offer is in the region of £50 million. And now we have to wait and see whether they can strike a deal. And I think Manchester United believe they can get something called a compulsory purchase, or which effectively means the negotiation goes out of the window and instead you kind of get a fair market valuation, a little bit like the commercial deals that we've spoken about and if they get compulsory purchase order, it means in layman's terms, they'll get the land at fair market value and they'll be able to force a sale. And from there, a whole lot quicker. So people see the plans, then it goes quiet, but that's very normal. And from my experience with other stadiums that I've covered in the past, after you see the shiny new designs, sometimes it takes a year or two before you see any movement. And slowly behind the scenes, you get stakeholder buy-in, you get funding, you get planning permission, you build your construction team. And then when that's all in place, you can start saying when you're first going to break the ground. And then from there, it can take anything between 3 and 5 years to actually build. So if they can get early next year, the parts in place, Jim Ratcliffe might well meet his timeline and it could be built within 5 years. But if it takes another year from now, I think it unlikely that they would be in a new stadium before 2031.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have a winning team playing in that new stadium, and to do that, I feel like Amorim does need a bit of investment. I wonder if he'll still be the manager. We'll have to wait and see. But looking ahead to the January window a little bit, Ben, I wanted to ask you about the midfield, because I get so many questions on this every day. I can already see people in the chat who are watching or listening, wherever they may be, are asking him about Anderson, ask him about Wharton, ask him about Baleba. I mean, what I've seen put out there is that Baleba, Wharton, Anderson, they're all having big price tags put on their heads, and the clubs don't want to let them leave in January. Does this make getting a midfielder quite difficult for United in that January window?
I don't think any of them are January targets, if I'm perfectly honest. I'd be staggered if Elliot Anderson left Nottingham Forest having broken into the England setup. He hasn't been there that long. Summer saga, Baleba, summer saga, zero chance. It's 1,000 chance that Brighton are going to engage mid-season. And with Adam Wharton, we have to be patient and respect Crystal Palace, because they may try and tie him down to a new deal. That deal may have new terms, like Antoine Semenyo at Bournemouth. There could be a release clause. Difficult to predict the Wharton situation. But again, I'm not expecting that to be a January saga. It's one for the summer. The thing about Wharton and Angelo Stiller is, if nothing happens with their contractual situations, Stiller's got a release clause. And for Wharton, my understanding is there's a gentleman's agreement that if he gets the opportunity to join, like European, possibly a Champions League club, which is why this season is important for United, he can leave for 60, 65 million. But that may change if he suddenly signs a new long-term deal with a release clause, and suddenly he may not even be attainable like Semenyo for the summer. So everyone thought Antoine Semenyo would leave Bournemouth, but right at the beginning of the window, he signed a deal. It has a release clause. He chooses to do one more year. So we're going to have to be quite patient with the Wharton situation. But I don't think any of these names are really ones to keep an eye on for January. Bellingham is very interesting, and I must stress really clearly,
you say Joe
Man
Bellingham,
United's interest. Joe Bellingham, yeah. Joe Bellingham's situation is very interesting. Different kind of midfielder, perhaps to some of the names that we've mentioned. Manchester United's interest is historical rather than necessarily. I think Crystal Palace actually are a bit more active, but he's maybe agitating a bit more to get an opportunity mid-season in some capacity, and we'll have to understand how Dortmund will react to that. But he might be a surprise name available in some capacity in the January window, but your Whartons, your Stillers, Baleba, no chance as far as I'm aware that we're going to get any January movement.
Joe Bellingham then is one to watch, nothing guaranteed, but if he pushes for game time, United have held historical interest. I mean, do you think going into January United might look at short-term loans? I know Conor Gallagher was mentioned in the summer, or do you think it will be wait until it's the perfect player to bring in, and that might wait till the summer? So it might be just one of them where Amorim's kind of just got to get through with what he's got.
Like we said a couple of shows ago, I think there's a very strong possibility two midfielders arrive. So we can't rule out January, which will be more opportunism, but they won't want to spend a Baleba budget, a Wharton budget, just for the sake of it, because they know come summer they'll have less money for one of those hits. So I expect Manchester United not to panic buy, but there will be names that out of opportunity, out of a lack of game time, out of unhappiness, or just at the right price, could be available in January. So Joe Bellingham, Conor Gallagher could be another. The challenge with Conor Gallagher, Manchester United's interest is genuine, and Gallagher may want to go somewhere and return to England and really boost his chances of getting in Thomas Tuchel's World Cup squad. So that's to watch, because we know they made an inquiry last summer. But the thing about Gallagher is not the player, it's Atletico Madrid. And my understanding is Atleti, at least in the latter part of the summer, show interest in doing a loan, even a loan with an option. So to get Gallagher, Atleti need to change their mind and give him something short term. And if it was a loan, I would expect Manchester United to be back in that conversation because they were there last summer. Or the flip side is a club like Manchester United or another, Crystal Palace had inquired as well, need to on a Gallagher, because Atleti were really clear in the final days and hours of the window. Either Gallagher stays, we're comfortable with that, or Gallagher is sold, and nothing in between. So part of the challenge with Gallagher will be, have Atletico Madrid become more flexible in January over the terms and the structure of the deal? And if they have, there is a chance that Manchester United will be back at the table.
Yeah, I mean, that's one for everyone to watch. So that could be something that develops in January. And then I wanted to ask about a midfielder we currently have, because you see us getting linked to potentially Joe Bellingham, you see us getting linked to Conor Gallagher on a potential loan. And then I think, you've got Kobbie Mainoo right there. I know it's different attributes of each player, but you've got such a good young talent there in Kobbie Mainoo. What is Kobbie Mainoo's stance going into the January transfer window, do you know? Because we know he was seeking that loan at the end of the summer. Is he still going to be seeking a move away?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think both Josh Zirkzee and Kobbie Mainoo, their perspective is they want to play. So it'll be no surprise whatsoever if nothing changes for Kobbie Mainoo, if he goes back to Manchester United and says, "You didn't give me a loan in the summer, I now need a loan," because again, he'll want to force his way into the England chances for the 2026 World Cup. So like Atleti and Conor Gallagher, a lot of the onus is on, have Manchester United changed their minds, and are they prepared to give Kobbie Mainoo minutes and game time somewhere and then bring him back to Manchester United? And I'm not so sure that Manchester United will sign off a loan for either Josh Zirkzee or Kobbie Mainoo unless they bring in. So the possibility of a January midfielder might unlock the chance for Kobbie Mainoo to go somewhere only on a loan. Or alternatively, Mainoo will have to change his mind and say, "I don't want a loan, I want to leave the football club." And then we're dealing in pure profit. And if Manchester United's valuation was met, he could leave permanently as well. So I would say the Mainoo situation is more open than most players heading into January, but Mainoo wants to play. Nothing improves over the festive period. I think it would be a surprise, speaking to people around the Mainoo camp, if he doesn't go back to Manchester United and again ask if he can get an opportunity elsewhere. His preference is not to leave Manchester United, it's to be loaned from Manchester United. So then we're back where we were in the final days of the window. And if Man United don't bring a midfielder in, then Man United's answer may be the same. We understand you want to play with the World Cup in mind, but they're not just going to lose a body without bringing another in.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because Kobbie Mainoo's contract currently expires in 2027. I understand that, you have an option for an additional year, but that's kind of running a risk with a talent like that who's yet to put pen to paper. I mean, there been any talks on the contract side? Because we were hearing stuff before the summer about, wage demands and Manchester United discussing that with Kobbie Mainoo, and it's just gone silent as of late.
Yeah, and I think it's gone silent because once Mainoo says that he wants to explore options away, it's very difficult to get the player to commit. One of those fluid situations where if he suddenly plays a run of games, then all parties might get around the table and say, we need to do that extension. But if he's not playing, it's hard to see Kobbie Mainoo signing something long term, because then as the January or summer windows open next year, if he has to leave, Manchester United are either going to point to the contract and keep him, or they're going to say permanent sale only. And then suddenly, maybe we were only extended to protect the value. And before you know it, player and club are not aligned. Well, I think it's gone quiet. Amorim is challenging Kobbie Mainoo to learn the system and to break in and to adapt and to improve. And Mainoo is waiting and seeing what opportunities he gets before he's prepared to commit to something. And this is why it's a situation. So I'm not aware of anything developing with a contract extension. But in an ideal world, we mustn't forget Manchester United. He wants to play for Manchester United. If he was playing for Manchester United, he wants to extend at Manchester United. If he's doing well for Manchester United are also open to extending Kobbie Mainoo. So it's kind of frustrating and cyclical to cover as a journalist, because when it's not going well, you lean towards an exit. But if it suddenly goes well, it could go to the other extreme, and there's not really any middle ground.
Well, let's see if he gets any minutes. It's Anfield on Sunday. I mean, it's difficult with Manchester United because there's only one game a week at this moment in time to get that game time, but let's see if he does. I mean, speaking of the weekend's football, remember everybody, that's football. It kicks off with live Bundesliga football on Friday, live match footage as well as Goldbridge commentating and being on that watch along with you. You don't want to miss it. Scout Watch, so many players coming over from the Bundesliga to the Premier League now. It's a really good opportunity to see live footage of them players. And then on Saturday, it kicks off 12:15 live for a 12:30 kickoff of Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea. See Elliot Anderson, who I know so many of you want, in action on that watch along. And then on Sunday, you have Anfield, 2:30. We are live from on the United Stand. It's going to be a cracker. Cannot wait for that game. I mean, Sonny Lammens, you would think, Ben, is going to get another start at Anfield. Very different to Old Trafford against Sunderland. He's going to go into a very intense atmosphere. And just on that point, we spoke about the fact Sonny Lammens is expected to get a run to claim that number one spot. Yeah. There was also some reports I saw about United exploring a more experienced goalkeeper to come in as well. And I saw it was getting linked to Stegen from Barcelona. Is there anything in that at all?
Yeah, I've not heard much on ter Stegen. I think the player has had quite a difficult few months. So there's definitely a possibility of a move. Could be January or alternatively could be next summer. But Manchester United and ter Stegen, not something that I'm aware of. One of the stumbling blocks there is wage. And I think if Manchester United are to sign an experienced goalkeeper, they won't want to be in a David De Gea situation where if Lammens does well and keeps the spot, or if Lammens is your long-term number one, an experienced goalkeeper on crazy money becomes counterproductive if they start as your number one and become your number two, or if they never really become the number one. Lammens is doing really well. They might look at free agency. Mike Maignan is obviously a really interesting target. We can never discount Emi Martinez because we know that before Lammens was signed, Manchester United were interested, but Villa's asking price was just too high. And I repeat what I said before, that Onana's expected to go, even though it's only a straight loan. And at the same time, Bayern, having had a taste of number one, could depart because maybe he's not comfortable being a number two. Once you've tasted the game time, sometimes you want it permanently. So either way, I expect Manchester United to sign a goalkeeper in 2026 because there is a strong possibility both Onana and Bayern leave the football club at some point, more likely the summer than January. And obviously Onana's off to the Africa Cup of Nations and on a season-long straight loan anyway. Who that might be, I think is almost in Sonny Lammens' hands. And my information, first of all, Lammens was going to get time to acclimatise, which happened, which is why it took him about 4 or 5 weeks to get the starting spot. Now I expect Lammens to start against Liverpool, Lammens to be the number, and Lammens to get a run of games right up until January. Then that will inform, is he ready now? Or do they need a more experienced short-term number one to give Lammens another year? If he's ready now, then anyone you bring in, experienced or not, will be behind Lammens. If he's not ready now, it will inform what they do in 2026. But rather than saying definitely they're going to get an Emi Martinez, definitely they're going to sign a Mike Maignan, definitely they're get a so-called number one with experience, I'm not sure it's that clear-cut. Because I think if Lammens lives up to his potential, he'll have every chance to keep the number one spot. And then come the summer, Manchester United may move in a different direction with a different kind of goalkeeper. Because if Lammens does well between now and the end of the season, why are you going to bother replacing him?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, he made a good impression in that debut against Sunderland, so hopefully he can keep it up. I know Anfield's a little bit of a different beast, but we'll all be behind him in that game, and hopefully he puts on another good performance. I mean, speaking about Anfield, it's such an important game for Ruben Amorim. I don't think Man United fans go into it with an expectation to win. I mean, we've not won there since 2016, especially considering our start to the season. But we go in there expecting to see a performance, especially after Liverpool's 3 back-to-back losses, actually. I wanted to ask a little bit about Ruben Amorim because there is a bit of curiosity among fans about how secure Ruben Amorim's job actually is. I mean, Sir Jim came out and backed him for 3 years, but then also, if you lose a couple of games and if you get beat quite badly at Anfield, it might change a little bit. So how secure is Amorim right now, do you think?
Yeah, I think you can't go from pressure building up to Sunderland to 3 years simply because that's not football. That's not how any big club works. And we know any manager at any top football club is 4 or 5 losses or 5 or 7 winless games away from having their future called out. Enzo Maresca qualified for the Champions League, won the Club World Cup, won the UEFA Europa League. Chelsea had a bit of a rot before they beat Liverpool, and even he was under a little bit of pressure. So to say 3 years blanket, I'm not so sure. But what I would say is that this period leading up to the next international break and potentially the games after it leading up to the festive period are really important, because Manchester United's aim is some kind of European football. If Ruben Amorim is in the mix for, let's just call it, top 6 heading into the festive period, I expect this game by game or month by month speculation over his future to disappear. Because if he can get to halfway and they're in the picture for a top 6 finish or some kind of European football, preferably Europa League or better, then I think it will be true that Amorim will get the full season. If they have a rut and they undo Sunderland by losing to Liverpool, losing to Brighton, losing to Nottingham Forest, losing to Spurs, you head into the international break and he's back where he started. And then I think the other extreme comes into play. And despite Sir Jim Ratcliffe saying 3 years, I think these next games are also going to be important for Amorim to show that he can build on that win over Sunderland. So nobody's expecting them to lose all the games, head into the international break worse than they are now. But if that extreme situation happens, I'm not expecting Sir Jim Ratcliffe to keep saying 3 years, because he was under pressure before Sunderland. If they're even worse come the next international break, he's under even more pressure. So I think you have these two extremes. One, Ruben Amorim has got to get to November or December and show they're in the picture for Europa League football or some kind of European football. And if he does that, then all the speculation goes away and he gets until the end of the season. If it goes the other way, and they're 15th in the table heading into the international break in November or the festive period, then I think that this whole 3 years goes out the window and we're still talking about the possibility of a mid-season change.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there for what the fans expect as well. So we'll have to see how he gets on. Hopefully he does well. I mean, just on the side of Ruben Amorim, do you know what his stance is behind the scenes? Because he spoke out himself saying, you know, you guys think you're harsh, but over in Portugal, I'd be being hounded everywhere. He understands the situation that he's in. Do you think him himself feels that as well?
Well, it's obvious from his public comments that Amorim has been affected by the pressure. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He speaks very honestly and I think eloquently at times. And that gives you more insight into Amorim than most managers. And a lot of the Portuguese managers like Victor Pereira at Wolves are exactly the same. So we know he's aware that this is a rock bottom. He said last season that it was statistically the worst ever Manchester United side. He said he'd walk away. He said he won't take any compensation. And these are all clues into also what he's telling Jim Ratcliffe and others at Manchester United behind the scenes as well. So if Amorim ever gets to a point where he thinks, I'm the wrong man, then there is a chance that he goes to the Manchester United board and says, let's mutually call this a day. What's less clear is whether or not he would seek compensation or whether he would be true to his public statement that he would walk away for free. But I think the difference between Amorim now and Amorim last season is last season he was like a deer caught in the headlights. It was mid-season. He didn't want the job at that time. The mood was low. He didn't have a summer window. So it was very difficult to get any consistency or show that a corner was turned. And it led in the end to just a free hit, a one-off game. And if he could have beaten them, you go, we've got Champions League out of nothing. And it's something to build on. But I still don't think he would have been very happy by the level of performance or the culture or the mood or the consistency. The difference this time around is there's more pressure on Amorim because he's had the summer, he's had some money, he's had his 2 number 10s, he's got his number 9. Okay, you can say I didn't get a midfielder and a fullback. But generally speaking, he's had quite a big window and he's had the off-season. So behind the scenes now, I'm told, Amorim is much more bullish. Because even though on the field we're not quite seeing the level of performance, although there are flashes of it, ironically, the Arsenal game was one of their best performances, even though they lost it. So we're seeing the potential and we're seeing what they can do. But what we're not seeing is Manchester United of old, winning game after game after game, stringing a run together, rising at the table, dominating games, making Old Trafford a fort. Behind the scenes, I'm told, Amorim is quite bullish because what he's seeing in training, what he's seeing in terms of the dressing room culture, and what he's seeing in flashes in games are all suggesting, if you're only judging it on metrics, that Manchester United have made progress. So I think he's more confident now than he was 3 or 4 months ago, but he's obviously also aware that this is Manchester United, and if he loses 3 or 4 games in a row, he's in a very precarious position, even if Ratcliffe claims he's going to get 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, and then on the dressing room as well, I know I ask you this all the time, but it's good to keep updated with the current state of it. Dressing room, how are their feelings towards Ruben Amorim? Because sometimes he seems like he's super close to the players. I mean, there was some rumours this week, I don't know how true they are, about how he wasn't too happy with Ugarte towards the end of last season. Seems like Mason Mount is really rated by Ruben Amorim. They have a good relationship. So what's the overall feeling in that dressing room?
Yeah, I'm going against the grain here because I'm told that Ruben Amorim really likes Manuel Ugarte and thinks he's exactly the right kind of profile and just needs to get that extra bit out of him.
Cool.
Because he's one of those signings, like several Manchester United signings, that when they joined, you look at what the player had done and you look at the age and the potential and you think, these are all going to improve this side. And yet Ugarte didn't. And there's several others that fall into that category, perhaps, that have come in previous windows. Rasmus Højlund being another example. Big price tags that haven't lived up to their billing. And I think Ruben Amorim with Ugarte just feels he's got more to give, but he's got all the right attributes. And Mason Mount is loved by Ruben Amorim and his fellow players as well. Can't tell you how many messages I got from people in and around Manchester United, player camps, executives, delighted when Mason Mount scored that goal against Sunderland because it was an instinctive finish. It was that of a confident player and it meant the world to him. And Ruben Amorim feels that Mason Mount can be really important. The challenge is, of course, if you've got Mount at 10, Bruno Fernandes wants to play more advanced. Cunha and Mbeumo are both 10s. They can't all fit in there. So Fernandes has to drop deeper, or alternatively, Mbeumo has to go wide right, or Cunha has to go wide left, or play as a number 9. So it's a welcome headache, but it can be difficult to keep all of the attackers happy at Manchester United with their role. But nobody's unhappy with Ruben Amorim. And I think that's the most telling thing, that if there's issues over roles or if there's issues over the system, these are things that the players are challenging themselves to iron out, because it's not all on the manager. It's on the players to adapt, because this 3-4-3 system is not rocket science. There should be no reason why Premier League players can't adapt to it. So the feeling within the dressing room is it's not all on the manager, and they're challenging themselves in the leadership team with the players to up their game. So there is a lot of support and there's a lot of personal relations and like for Ruben Amorim as a character and as a manager. And Harry Maguire, as Casemiro, they're doing a lot more talking in the last sort of 6 months than maybe they've done previously to try and get everybody pulling in the right direction. So I don't think there's any issue between manager and players. There's obviously teething problems that have extended far longer than the teething period should with the system. There's 1 or 2 players that just either aren't playing or are not delighted with their exact role, but they're happy to pitch in, like Bruno Fernandes, for the good of the team. So hopefully another international break, a good win against Sunderland. If they can get a statement win against Liverpool, they'll finally turn a corner.
Just on Harry Maguire there, you mentioned him as part of the leadership group. Is there anything on him potentially signing a new contract? Because a lot of people thought he might be going on a free transfer, his time might be up at Manchester United. Then there was rumours that United would like to keep him and he'd like to stay, but he'd have to be on a reduced salary. Is there any updates on that?
Yeah, I think it's like we said on the last show, that Manchester United and Maguire want the situation resolved sooner rather than later, partly because Maguire wants to know where he stands and not have it as a distraction heading into a World Cup. And also because from Manchester United's perspective, it's a lot easier if you extend early to have your cake and eat it. If you're talking to a player about extending when it looks like they were going to depart, like with De Gea, the player starts to understand maybe they're not fighting hard, or maybe they're only extending to protect my value. So I think all parties are happy to extend Maguire now, as long as you say, he reduces his terms. But that doesn't definitively mean Maguire will stay. It's like Ilkay Gundogan extending at Man City at the beginning of the last summer and then being sold to Turkey at the end of it. So it's in Manchester United's interest to extend Maguire because they value him as a squad player. If he age, should he stay? It suits all parties. Maguire can go and play the World Cup, hopefully from his perspective, and not have to worry about moving clubs. But if they extend him on the right terms and the right offer comes from Maguire during the summer, I don't think Manchester United would stand in his way either. So actually the extension could suit all parties on the right financial terms because it leaves the situation open and it allows Maguire to focus on his summer. Then after the World Cup, if he finds a club, he could still leave and Manchester United can cash in. And if he wants to stay, he's on a reduced wage. And that obviously also benefits. I think an early extension, maybe even before the year, would just suit all parties, but it doesn't give absolute clarity that Maguire will definitely stay.
Thank you for that. And then also Casemiro as well. There was rumours earlier on in the week that it's not beyond the realms of possibility that United could offer him a new contract, but on a reduced salary. What's the likelihood of him staying, or do you think he will run down that contract and move on?
Casemiro is still quite well contracted. I actually think there's a 1-year option as well in his current deal.
Oh, really?
So you can understand why the player may be less open, as with Maguire, and a reduction to going down that route. But we'll have to wait and see. What I can tell you on Casemiro is that he's very happy. He never had a definitive Saudi offer last summer. He's on the list of Saudi targets, but we've got no indication as to whether he's prepared to go. He can earn big money there, but he's on good money at Manchester United. So if there is a Casemiro extension, it would on the one hand show his recent importance to Ruben Amorim, but at the same time, it would be a bit like Maguire, that Manchester United would be looking to keep him potentially still on the same length as his current deal, but on reduced terms. If Casemiro's open to that, it's a great deal for Manchester United. So we'll have to wait and see how that develops. But it's not as advanced as Maguire. I wouldn't say Maguire is going to happen today, tomorrow, but those talks have started. With Casemiro, it's more just an exploratory conversation at the moment to understand two things. Number one, does he have options for next summer? And number two, if he stays at Manchester United, would he be open to reducing his wage? Once Manchester United have those answers, the situation with Casemiro will be clearer.
Yeah, I think I very, very, very much doubt that United would be offering that 350 grand a week for another year. But who knows if he would be open to accepting reduced terms. But like you said, with targets in the summer being to bring in new midfielders, it'd be, I think, time to hand over the baton. But currently, he's super, super important to this team. So he's one of, I think, Amorim's first names on the team sheet at this minute. So let's see what happens with him. Finally, Ben, before Anfield, I'm wondering if there's any good news regarding the injury front. Update on Lisandro Martinez in his situation. Rumours that he's coming back into first team training. Yeah. And then also anything on Noussair Mazraoui. Rumours he might be back.
I think they're both very positive. Mazraoui, I don't really have any timeline, but he's ahead of schedule. Lisandro Martinez is going to be back in relatively soon. Of course, full training versus playing are two different things. But the expectation as we head towards the international break is Lisandro Martinez will be back. I think he's been out for about 8 or 9 months. So real boost to the dressing room, real boost to his fellow professionals. And he'll enter into full training relatively imminently now. And then once he's back on the grass, I think they'll be quite protective. So it wouldn't surprise me if he returns to full training before the November international break, which is very possible, if then they stagger his return to match action to make sure that no undue risks are taken. But both of these players are going to be back quite soon. Mazraoui, I don't have a timeline. I haven't made that many inquiries on it. But the last I spoke to those close to the player camp, he was getting back a bit quicker than first expected. And the rehab was going well. And with Martin, the reports, I think, originally that were broken by Sky Sports that said he'll be back in full training soon are accurate to my understanding. So it's all very positive from a Manchester United perspective.
Well, that's very, very good to hear. And then, just before I let you go back to sunny Madrid, I wanted to ask, is there anything Manchester United fans should watch out for heading into that January window? Is there anything that we should be looking out for? I know a lot of people talk about midfielders, or is it quite quiet right now?
Well, like I say, it's about opportunism in the markets. And if Mainoo was to leave, then they'd have more urgency. And that might mean that they try and spend a bit of their summer budget in January. Thing to understand about January is not all the targets you want are available, and it's a seller's market. So you get hit with a kind of Man United tax. And the World Cup complicates things because several players may want to wait until the summer, get the World Cup out the way, and then move. Mid-season can be very difficult. Imagine if you're a Elliot Anderson, just to give one random example, and you're there and you're playing every week, and Thomas Tuchel's saying, if you just stay at Forest, you're in my squad. Then you move to, again, purely hypothetically, Man United in January, and what happens if Kobbie Mainoo stays and wins the spot? Or it's still Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes playing deeper. Before you know it, it might cost you a place in the spot. If it's a Conor Gallagher, it may be the opposite. He may feel that coming back to the Premier League is really going to enhance his chances. So it is a problematic window, and it's difficult to predict at this stage. Maybe I'll have a clearer picture in late November, exactly what direction Manchester United are going to move in. You hear a lot of rumours, but I don't like to give you a name and say it's concrete for January and then find actually it's all just agent-led or it's all just speculation. So I do think they're biding their time, and the mantra will be, we will not panic buy. And if we need to save the budget for the summer, for the Whartons or the Balebers or the Stillers or the Andersons, then we'll do that. But I think there is a realistic chance two midfielders could come in. Then don't discount in January, even if Lammens is doing well.
Sorry, what did you say then? I just cut off for a second. Don't discount
a goalkeeper in January. If Lammens is doing well, because we don't know what's happening with Bayern, there might be a situation where an experienced goalkeeper comes in that's prepared to be a number two or prepared to challenge for the number one. I guess quite similar to when Manchester United brought in Dubravka on loan from Newcastle United. And then the other area, I'm told, remains fullback. And it might feel that on paper, Man United are quite well covered, particularly on the left side fullback. But I'm still told that's an area that Ruben Amorim wants the recruitment team to work on. I don't know whether it will be January or more likely the summer, but I'll be surprised if the summer 2026 window ends, encompassing January window as well, and Manchester United don't have a new fullback in some capacity.
And then I know I keep asking about the same thing, but I just wanted to clarify it a little bit. With Anderson, I know you just use it as a hypothetical, but we've spoken about Wharton being a target, we've spoken about Stiller being a target, we've spoken about Belaber being a previous target. Is Anderson actually a target? Because he keeps getting brought in, but I don't know if he's actually on the list.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything advanced between Man United and Elliot Anderson. There's clear appreciation. He's doing incredible at Nottingham Forest. He's certainly the profile that they're looking for. So it would be normal that 6 or 7 of these names are being considered. And I think we're back to where we started, like with the number 10s, where because they're revamping the midfield in likelihood at some point in 2026, they want one thing. So everything falls under one umbrella, with maybe Angelo Stiller being the only left field option, but it's because they might add 2. But the main thing, at least from Jason Wilcox and Ruben Amorim in their meetings, is find a transplantable Premier League fielder that can be put straight into the starting 11. And I think Wharton would fall into that category. I think Belaber would fall into that category if he continues to find last season's form. And I think to some extent, Elliot Anderson would too. So yes, appreciated. Yes, they're aware that he might be available in summer 2026, but it's nothing more than that at this stage. And I think of all the names mentioned, the one that would surprise me the most if he moved in January is Elliot Anderson. Maybe we'll come back here, famous last words, and I'll be eating humble pie. It's not a sourced opinion. It's a personal opinion. Of course, it's informed by speaking to people around the game and around the England camp. But my feeling is that Elliot Anderson is really happy at Nottingham Forest. He's really happy with his form. And he knows if he does nothing between now and the summer, he stands a great chance of World Cup selection. And that might just lean him against doing anything rash or January focused, because he'll know if he makes the England squad, he'll be in the shop window for the summer anyway. So why move in January, go to a new club, a new manager, a new system, and suddenly find that it might be detrimental to your World Cup chances?
Thank you for that, Ben. And then lastly, I know I said lastly like 5 times now, but I've got a question.
lastly.
Exactly.
I love it.
I've got a question for you now. It's not football related, but
oh God,
how many weeks is it until Christmas?
I'd have to guess or take a look. I mean, what?
You can have a guess if you want.
2.5 months?
You can have a guess.
How many weeks is it until Christmas? God, I am going to guess at 10.
And you're right. You actually are right. And on that note, because it does lead to something, everybody, the new Christmas jumper is now live on our Shopify link. The link is in the description, and it's based on this season's very popular third kit. I own it, and I think a lot of people either want to own it or do own it. It's a really nice kit, and we've created a Christmas jumper that you want to get hold of quickly. It is very, very nice. So, Ben, maybe on one of our shows we can both be wearing the Christmas jumpers. Who knows?
In Christmas jumpers, I like that. We're not matched today, but only because by being at this conference, I've had to go smarter than normal. I managed to put on a Hugo Boss shirt, but forget to shave. So I'm both scruffy and chic. But if you want to send me a Christmas jumper, of course, I'll always pay for it. Do that, and we'll have a matching Christmas show in exactly 10 weeks' time.
I'm sure we can work something out, Ben. I'm sure we can. Do not worry. We have Ben Jacobs wearing our Christmas jumper. The advertisement goes wild. Like, people will be lining up on the website to try and buy it. So
anything I wear goes down, not up in value, because I'm not known for my fashion.
No, Ben, I think always on the show. Amazing. Well, we're always coordinating. So what does that say about me? I'm joking. But look, guys, thank you so much for watching. Smash a like on the video for Ben if you've not already. And Ben, all that's left to say is next time we'll be speaking, Anfield will have happened. So, any final prediction?
Well, I think it's a good time to play Liverpool because there's a lot of change. And even though they're the defending Premier League champions, and some may say there'll be some backlash, I think Manchester United will feel confident. And it's weird because a lot of people have said to me in the industry, Man United have got nothing to lose. And personally, I think that's ridiculous because a club like Manchester United have always got everything to lose. And if they go into a game like this and they think, because of where we're at and where Liverpool are at, we've got a free hit. For me, that's the wrong mentality because it's Manchester United. And if Manchester United can't turn up to a game against Liverpool and think, we're as big as these guys, we should be challenging for the title and we can beat these guys because they've lost games on the road. If they don't have that serial winner mentality, and if they go in with an underdog complex, they'll get beat and it will be a horrible watch. Some say it's a bit of a free hit. Some say that they can go there, and if they get a result, it's positive because not everyone's expecting it. And if they don't get a result, to some extent, you go, okay, let's just focus on the other games now before the international break. But I think they've got to go there with a bit of swagger, with a bit of ego, and they've got to try and catch Liverpool at a bad time. And if they do that, I think they can get something from the game. And if they get something from the game, whether a draw or a win, I think that's momentum. And then you've got to go and you've got to beat Brighton at home. And suddenly you've strung a run of form together.
Show what we take it. Play it in the dressing room. Play it in the dressing room. Go there with swagger. Thank you so much, Ben, for everything today. And thank you to everybody else in the chat as well. Everyone watching or listening around the world. We appreciate you. And yeah, everyone, we will see you on the next one. Thanks, Ben.